Dan.
Well, we've been talking about barbecue and all sorts of other things, and I guess now it's time to do a podcast. This is Josh Weaver with Greg.
Hello.
Daniel.
Howdy.
Marcus.
Hello. Sorry, I was going to go with howdy, but Daniel stole my
See, I knew you were going to
Dang.
go with howdy. I just making you think on your feet.
This
I
is
thought you
the-
said we were going to sink our teeth into this here podcast when you start talking about barbecue.
That's good. I didn't think of that pun or joke or thing. But this is the Temple Daily Telegram Sports Podcast.
Greg's making his campaign for a new host. So.
He can have it.
I don't want that job. That's too much responsibility.
Yes. Yeah, got to plug in the microphone every week. It's
the pay isn't good
difficult. Well, yes. Also true. Week 7 of the high school football season. Not as busy as week 6, but still some pretty good matchups out there, including Temple at Killeen on a Thursday night. The Wildcats' second Thursday game of the season. Their last one, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
2 of them this
Yeah.
year.
Which is probably enough.
That's enough.
Yeah. And also in 12-6A, Cobbers Cove at Hewitt Midway, Harker Heights at Waco, and Killeen Shoemaker at Killeen Ellison. In District 5-4A1, Brownwood at Gatesville. Looks kind of juicy. 10-3A1, Academy at Troy, Gerald at Cameron Yo, and Rockdale at Lago Vista. 8-2A1, Italy at Bruce Villetti. 13-2A1, Marlin at Holland. District 13-2A2, Bartlett at Bremond, and Granger at Iola. And in TAP's 6-man Division II, District 2, Holy Trinity Catholic at Bulverde Bracken. And in non-district, Irving the Highlands at Central Texas Christian.
Undefeated CTC.
Yes,
right?
rolling along.
Yeah.
They are having themselves a pretty good season so far. Idle this week, Belton, Salado, Rogers, Moody, Rosebud Lot, and Buckholz.
That's quite a list.
Yeah, those teams are recharging those batteries. Belton, especially after going through that barn burner last week at Temple, 58-55 and 3 overtimes. That was a good one for the folks in the stands.
Yes.
The coaching staff and players were all sore one way or another the next day. And Temple has a quick turnaround now after that, going against Killeen, which is 4-2 overall and 3-1 in district. So, Greg, I mean, you know, how's Temple feeling after last week?
Well, I think they were, they were pretty beat up coming out of the Belton game. There weren't any like tangible injuries per se. You know, nobody's going to miss this game against Killeen because of anything that happened against Belton. But apparently, Scott Stewart, the Temple coach, said his training room looked like a MASH unit on Saturday morning when he went in there. And that game will take a lot out of both teams involved. I mean, Temple, just the only bonus was you got the win. I mean, they didn't play especially well as you saw. Gave up a lot of yards, a lot of long touchdowns, a lot of missed tackles, missed defensive assignments. It was probably the most. Temple might have made more mistakes in that game than they did the previous 4 games combined. But of course, that was the best team probably Temple has played this year. Just from my eyes, they look better than Round Rock Cedar Ridge, which Temple beat in the opener.
Yeah.
I mean, Belton's got some serious playmakers on offense, and I think Connor Carruthers. I mean, if anybody was doubting how good he is at quarterback, he silenced those doubts because he was really a playmaker.
Yeah.
Very.
464 yards passing, which is a school record.
Was it really?
Single
Wow.
game school record, for Belton.
Yeah.
And he completed 27 passes. Most of those were under pressure because Temple's defensive line was a beast.
Yes.
And definitely overmatched Belton's offensive line. So Carruthers, I mean, doing what he did last week was pretty.
Well, and when you consider that was a Temple defense that for the year I think was giving up 216 yards a game total, and their starting defense hadn't allowed a point in 3 games, to make them look like that was pretty shocking. But from the Temple standpoint, I think the main culprit, Stewart said, was guys, rather than just doing what they were supposed to do and are coached to do, was trying to like do their job and other people's jobs. You know, so like compensating for maybe someone who wasn't getting the job done, or trying to take on too much responsibility. And these were some of like Temple's veteran defensive players, like 3-year starters, guys who ostensibly should know better. They just got outside their lanes basically, and complicated things. And you have to give a lot of credit to Belton though. The schemes, how hard some of their guys were to tackle. They mixed it up with enough run game, including Carruthers, and then 4 different receivers that were a vital part of it. But there were just some head scratching plays from Temple's defensive perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 45-minute first quarter. Temple was winning 27-14.
Yes.
And Temple also led 42-28 late in the game, and Belton came back to tie it.
Yeah, it was kind of like Texas-Oklahoma game kind of or something, where you think you got them and then no.
Not just head scratching on both sides, but just like big plays from both sides as well to kind of compensate for some of those mistakes. I mean, the way it went was pretty fascinating to watch.
I think, I don't know what anybody else thought, but I think coming out of that game, I think it was kind of fitting the way the game ended, because I think the best player on the field was Quentin Johnston. I mean, there's a lot of good players on the field, but I think he's that one guy that just so far, like, nobody really has an answer for. I mean, he's on pace for 24 touchdown catches in the regular season. Mm-hmm. Whether he'll keep that pace up, who knows? But he's just that one guy that's kind of borderline unguardable, and he catches a 25-yard touchdown on the very first play of third overtime, and that's how it ends up. Yeah. After some heroics by both kickers and maybe both defenses stepping up actually
to force those
field goals. But it's a great game, and it's a kind of unfortunate Belton loss, because that's probably the best team they've had in a while, and they had a real shot to win the game.
Oh yeah.
But
I mean, and Belton's defense, they didn't take Johnston out of it, but in the middle quarters, he was pretty quiet.
Well, they shut Temple out in the middle 2 quarters.
I mean, they did some things in the secondary or whatever they did as far as coverages go to kind of create some things that worked against Temple.
You knew after a while that was the game that whichever team lost it was just going to be kind of sick to their stomach, because you both played well enough to win, but they both made so many mistakes that you just weren't going to have a good feeling coming out. And even from Temple's perspective, I know Scott Stewart, he was like, I mean, of course he likes the win, but I mean, to give up 55 points, I mean, he was really beside himself as kind of a defensive guy, and it's just hard to rejoice in that win when you just get shredded defensively. But you'll take the win and move on, because another big game this week.
Yeah, Colleen, Belton, like I mentioned, is off this week, so Tigers coaching staff will probably be out there with you or in the same press box at Leo Buckley Stadium.
We can fight over that Rudy's barbecue.
Yes, checking out the Killeen Kangaroos, who have had a pretty darn good season themselves. They're right now obviously in the playoff mix, in that top 4, at 3-1, and it's Belton plays them in 2 weeks, which is going to be important as far as playoff seedings go. Both of those are big school Division I teams. But Killeen has looked good, and they've looked good on defense especially, and they also have a couple playmakers on offense. Right.
Start with the defense, because it's a pretty special unit that Killeen has. I mean, they're only allowing, I think, 11.3 points a game on defense, which is pretty salty. And then, they have apparently a great front 7. Like, their defensive line and their 3 linebackers are just – they're all good. I mean, you got one guy, Raquan Thompson. He's committed to Tulsa, 6'3", 270. You got a quicker defensive end named Amir Ward. I mean, both these guys have like almost 25 quarterback pressures for the year.
Yeah.
So even when they're not getting sacks, they're putting heat on you. They've got sure tackling linebackers. They have a good. I like the name of their free safety, Willie McGee. Oh. You remember him as a speedy switch hitter from the 1980s St. Louis Cardinals.
It's the most normal name I've heard so far.
Yeah, I think Vince Coleman is his backup. But and then they have on offense, they've got Kadarius Marshall, who his name will not be familiar to anybody, because apparently he moved in from Mississippi. He's only a sophomore. He has almost 900 yards of rushing, 9 touchdowns. He has 4 touchdown catches. So he's the guy that Scott Stewart is. He's very leery of how good this guy is. But they throw the ball too. They've got DJ Dormius at wide receiver. They've got another guy who's 6'6" that has caught some balls, and apparently the offensive line is huge. So
No Ozzie Smith, though.
no Ozzie Smith or Tommy Herr, but.
There's now people are going to have to look up.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if maybe Joaquin Andujar is the punter or something. But I hope Craig McMurtry from TC is listening to this podcast because he faced all of those guys
That's
back
like a
with
1
the
in a
Braves.
million shot.
Yeah.
There is that.
he's got bigger fish to fry. But anyway, no, this is plus the quick turnaround for Temple.
Yeah.
I mean, Killeen's in the same boat, and surprisingly, Killeen really struggled to beat Shoemaker last week. Shoemaker was up 21-11 about 4 minutes into the fourth quarter, and Killeen finished well. Marshall scored the game-winning touchdown with a few minutes left. But, I mean, that's a team that's lost 26 in a row now.
Yeah.
So you kind of wonder why Killeen struggled so much. But they won the game just like Temple managed to win on kind of an off night. So I don't think Temple feels extremely comfortable going into this game, and they're going to have to play, I'd say, a lot better than they did last week to make sure they win this game, and even then it's going to be tough.
Right. And, it's definitely, I guess surprising on paper the way Killeen struggled against Shoemaker, but we've kind of been saying throughout the season that Shoemaker is one of those teams that's just going to keep getting better and better the more games they play. And, that sounds like last week was an example of that.
And also,
starting to happen.
I think Shoemaker's about to enter maybe some games that they've got a real shot to win, like, Ellison Heights.
Week, right? Yeah.
I mean, Waco. I don't know if they've played Waco yet. I'm not sure.
don't think so.
But I mean, conceivably, Shoemaker could still maybe win 3 district games if it comes together.
There's 0-3 in district. They have not played them.
So anyway, I mean, if they could somehow manage to go 3-5, it probably wouldn't be good enough for the playoffs. But yet, that would be big time progress at the shoe.
I do have a question for you
Yes, sir.
guys. Greg, I'll start with you. Temple, obviously last week's game was a huge game. And with the motions running high and the way that ended, triple overtime and everything, you've already talked about how fear they are of Killeen, but how big of a chance is there that Temple, because of the play last week, is not up for this game?
I think it could be a deal almost like an unintentional letdown. Like they know going into this game how important the game is, and also how good Killeen's defense is, and also Killeen's got a pretty good offense too. But I mean, it might be you say you're getting back up for this game, and then when you hit the field, the same juice might just not be there. I mean, it's like maybe your battery's not 100% recharged from a really long, tough, emotional game that was. And by the way, you got one less day to prepare, and it's on the road, and there won't be that same atmosphere at Leo Buckley Stadium on a Thursday night. I mean, Killeen will have more fans than, say, probably like Shoemaker or Heights, but it's not going to be like 12,000 people urging you on and screaming at the top of their lungs. So Temple's going to have to bring kind of some of its own juice. But the thing, though, is Temple's got a very good all-around coaching staff. These guys know what they're doing, even though they have turnover every year because they lose good coaches to other places. But I mean, these guys know how to coach football. And, I mean, if anybody's going to probably find a way to get a team motivated and up, it's Scott Stewart, who's kind of a fiery guy and been known to maybe throw some chairs and stuff in the locker room. So
I got you.
I think they'll be ready, but they could be ready and still lose this game. I think it's entirely possible.
And then my question about Belton for Josh, I guess, is kind of along those same lines. A game like that where it's so emotional and you end up on the losing side, a lot of teams just want to get right back at it the next week and face somebody. So do you think it hurts them to have this week off and have to maybe think about that Temple game much longer?
I wouldn't say it hurts them at all. I mean, I think you're right. They're probably obviously wanting to get back out there as soon as possible. But, the being off this week is probably more beneficial in a way. I mean, they get after playing a game like that last week against Temple. Greg said the training room at Temple was pretty crowded the day after. I mean, it was probably the same way over there at Belton. I mean, that was a physical game. They're going to have some guys banged up, and you get this extra few days to kind of refresh, and I think that'll help them in the long run. And Belton's kind of been, they've said all season, that they've had this kind of mentality of just being resilient and, just playing the next play and, putting the previous ones behind them. So I don't see them, dwelling on what happened Friday for too much longer other than what they've already done. I mean, they're kind of moving on already. They're going to be, like I said, scouting Colleen coming up tomorrow or Thursday, and they're just going to go right to it because, I mean, they have a lot to play for. They'd like to play at home again in the playoffs, and that's a possibility still if they finish as the number one Division I seed out of this district. That would be 3 years in a row, depending on whatever the number 2 seed in Division I of the other district finishes. But, I mean, they have that to play for. They could still get a piece of the district title, even still as well. I mean, Temple still has to play Midway. That's, and Belton still has to play Midway. A lot of things can happen. So, too many things out there for Belton to do for them to kind of, just get down and not feel like there's anything left to do.
That district seems like it's really separated though. The top 4 through Cove, I guess, is kind of that break team, and that is not great but still pretty good.
2-2 in district.
2-2,
right now, yeah.
and they need to pull off a win that's unexpected though.
Right.
I was going to say that don't you think that Belton is still a team that they're looking for that signature win?
Yeah,
which given their current schedule, they had a chance against Westlake. An opportunity going into the game to score, and then you got Temple, and then later on you got Midway. It seemed like they need to grab one of those wins.
For sure.
To
and it's kind of been that way. Over the last 3.5 years that I've been covering the team, they've had some big wins. Beating South Grand Prairie in the playoffs a couple years ago was obviously big. But in the other big games, they've come up a tad short. I mean, Temple by an average of 6 points the last 3 years.
Single digits every year.
They had Midway. I think it was a 14-point lead or something in the fourth quarter. They ended up losing in overtime a couple of years ago. But yeah, I mean, not just this season, but in general, Belton's kind of been on the cusp of that. That signature victory. I think they're probably looking at it now as Midway in the season finale, regular season finale, as their next chance at getting it.
But really, that Colleen game is probably no less important. I mean, it might not be the marquee like Midway, but
the seeding. I mean, you might have to go on the road on the first round of the playoffs. Allen is, if you win that first round, Allen's probably the second round opponent. Yeah, right. Yes. Colleen is huge in 2 weeks for Belton.
I think
sure.
Isn't Allen's band called like the Marching 900 or something?
Yeah, something.
Like the
The marching lots of kids.
That's okay.
Yeah. Breaking the action. We need to bring in Daniel Zepeda with all of his stats.
Hello.
He's back off the disabled list this week.
Feeling a little bit
back.
better, not as stuffed up.
It's nice to have a clear voice again.
Ready to read some numbers.
What is that phrase? Clear hearts, clear minds, or something like that. So,
Can't lose.
Let's get to it. Got some area statistical leaders for you, so get your pens and notebooks out. Over at the, there we go. I love my special effects team. Always ready to jump the gun. For your area rushing leaders, we've talked about him all year long. Rylan Turner out of CTCS. He's pretty much been tearing it up for the Lions. He moved in over the end of the summer. We had a good story on him a couple weeks ago, so be sure to check it out on our website. But he's got 1,218 yards rushing this season, 20 touchdowns. Both of those numbers lead all the area. Number 2, Zach Herbachik for Troy, the sophomore stud. He keeps on performing, pretty much the workhorse for Troy. He usually averages well over 30 carries a game. He's got 1,074 yards, 12 touchdowns on the year. Connor Cook out of the Salado rushing machine. He's got 718 yards, 9 touchdowns. Another name, Nathan Quattlebaum for the Bruce Valetti Eagles, 609 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns on the year. Then for Holy Trinity, Lane Dack. He was injured last season, but they're glad that he's back, and he's been producing for them, 577 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns. Ryan Pickett over at Granger, he's having another big year. His senior season, he's a big reason why the Lions have won 5 straight, and they're 5-1 on the season. They're going into district play this coming week. He's got 531 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns. And then Dejon Overton for Temple. He's one of the best runners in the area. 523 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns. A couple of other guys that are up there, but I'm just kind of looking through the list. Kind of skipping down some, Nico Vargas, he's got 381 yards, so not the highest yardage, but he does have 10 touchdowns. I think through the last 2 or 3 weeks, he's had 6, 7, maybe even 8 of those touchdowns since he's kind of taken over that running game.
Would you say he has a nose for the goal line?
I would say so. It seems like I've read that before out of a story. Maybe that was your story, Greg. I don't know. Maybe just possibly. So, but yeah, Nico Vargas, he's been doing real well for the Yeomen as they continue District 10 3A1 play. So moving it all over, we got the ground game. So now we're going to go to the aerial attack. Passing, your passing leaders. That triple overtime game for Temple and Belton really did a lot to help those two quarterbacks kind of pad the stats, and they both needed pretty much every yard in that game. Connor Carruthers for Belton, he leads the area with 1,582 yards passing, 18 touchdowns. Josh, I think it was you said earlier that those numbers already eclipsed his total.
Yeah, he surpassed his totals in both those categories from last year.
And there's still, what,
4 regular season games left.
Right,
So this is the coach is Slade O'Hare. Is this his 3rd year there?
Yes.
I would be interested to see if Connor Carruthers passed for more yards the other night than Salado has passed for since Alan Hare got to Salado. 30 games ago or something.
We have the package.
We do have.
Look.
I would think
that's what we need a fact checker on.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It is possible.
Yes.
Jared Wiley over for Temple. He's got 1,156 yards, 17 touchdowns for the Wildcats. Braden Brashear, he's having a good year for Cameron Yo. 1,010 yards, not quite 100 yet. 9 touchdowns. Then a pretty big surprise for Gerald Aaron Rodriguez. He's really kind of helped Gerald turn things around there, kind of leading their offensive attack. He's kind of a dual threat quarterback. He's done a little more passing than running here the past couple of weeks, but he's definitely capable of scoring on the ground or through the air. He's got 973 yards passing, 12 touchdowns on the year. And then rounding out your top 5, Jace Robinson over at Rockdale. He has got 680 yards passing and 9 touchdowns on the season. Anything to add, Greg? I feel like Greg's just ready to add something at any point.
Well, no, I guess I just meant those. You don't want to let those receivers get left they're left out.
Oh,
someone had to catch those passes.
That's true. See, we're heading
at least give us like a top 3, Daniel.
No, we're heading over there.
He was just turning the pages to get his stuff ready.
I know, and I'm going to save everyone a lot of trouble with these top 3 guys. They're all from Belton. Top 3 receivers in the area from Belton. And
Reception-wise, right?
Reception-wise, correct. So Anthony Brown leads all area receivers and receptions with 40. Jose Perez with 25. Then Denver Holman with 22. Casey Coring, I believe.
Sure.
We'll go with that.
Rogers.
Out of Rogers, you say it with confidence, and people will believe you. He's got 21 catches, and then Tyler Lewis out of Gatesville, he's got 21 catches as well. Yardage and touchdown-wise, Quentin Johnston, we've talked about him all season long as well out of Temple. He's got 580 yards receiving, 12 touchdowns on the season. That's by and far more than any other player in the area. Anthony Brown, again, he's got 459 yards, 5 touchdowns. Casey Coring of Rogers, 431 yards, 4 touchdowns. Denver Holman of Belton, 375 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then Kadrian Hammond out of Cameron Yo, 372 yards, 6 touchdowns. And Greg, I'm going to give you one more since you gave me a hard time about the receivers. We got Brady Shelton out of Holland leading the Hornets with 371 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns on the season.
Thank you, Daniel.
You know what? Greg keeps
On
me
behalf
honest.
of those fine pass catchers, thank you. I was just going to throw in a little one-liner. The other night, I think Anthony Brown from Belton, he was more like Antonio Brown from the Steelers.
Especially on that last-second touchdown catch and run, 33 yards with 13 seconds left.
Clutch.
That was some uncharacteristic Swiss cheese by Temple's defense because he was just slicing through. A lot of determination by that kid
Yes.
though, to get there.
For sure. Well, a couple names or a couple teams that you mentioned in those stats, just real quick, Rockdale and Cameron Yo. They're not playing each other this week, but they are next week. We say teams don't look ahead, but I'm sure they're looking ahead a little bit. But they do have some business to take care of this week. Rockdale opened its new field last week and ran all over it, scoring 70 points against Manor New Tech. And Yo rolled over a non-district opponent, 45-0 or something like that. Cameron's hosting Gerald and Rockdale's at Lago Vista. Got to figure those teams are wanting to put their best foot forward this week to give themselves a lift going into the big battle for the bell or of the bell. It's of, right?
Of the bell.
Battle of the Bell. So, those are two games we'll be keeping an eye on for sure, and then we'll be discussing that rivalry coming up next week.
Get your tickets now
Yeah, for sure.
for our podcast next week.
Oh yes,
I meant.
yes. Get your headphones ready.
Standing room only.
Yes.
Where's that cricket?
There's more than one cricket. They're falling from the ceiling in this place.
Big game.
Yeah, Troy Academy for sure is another big game in District 10 3A1. Academy 2-0 in district. They beat the teams that they needed to beat in New Tech and Lago Vista. And Lago Vista was up 13-0, I think, early in that game. And Academy came back and scored 27 in a row.
27 straight.
Yeah.
With its vaunted 2-quarterback
Right?
system.
Yeah. And Troy rebounded from its district opening loss and handled Gerald pretty easily, 45-2.
Put the beat down on him, yeah. The safety almost makes it sound even more lopsided.
Right, yeah. Anytime you finish with 2, it's just like, ooh, man, bummer.
It's not-
So Gerald better this year, but not quite there yet.
Not in the upper echelon, but hey.
But that's also a very improved Troy team, and we've talked about that this season as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah, definitely. Holland had a good win last week against Thorndale, 2-0. Brownwood at Gatesville in District 5, 4A1. District opener.
just
Yeah, and we've kind of alluded to this several weeks before. Yeah, this district, once they get started, it's going to be interesting to watch every game in this district every week. Just because, the teams in this district, Brownwood, Stephenville, Gatesville, China Spring, Waco, La Vega, there's no slouches. And, you look at their records and you're going, oh, okay, if there's no slouches, why do all these teams have at least 2 losses? And it's because to get ready for this district, they play impossible, or not really impossible, but just insane
difficult,
non-district schedules. I mean, you got Brock, you have teams playing Midlothian Heritage. I mean, one of these teams would schedule Allen if they'd let them, I'm sure. But it's just that kind of thing. And so the Brownwood Gatesville game, could be a good one. It may, you don't want to say that one game is going to determine your playoff fate, but it very well could. I mean, it's early. It's the opening game of district, but you got to get a win any chance you can, and that should be a fun one to watch. And
Usually
see.
Stephenville and Waco La Vega are not easy wins for anybody.
5 teams forward playoff spots. I mean, you better win one early. Don't
Yeah.
wait. Because who is the team that everyone's going to beat? I don't know if there is one in that district. So you better steal one or
If you're Gatesville, you're hoping it's not you.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been years past where we thought, Gatesville's going to be the odd team out of a playoff mix, and they're always there surprising people because Coach Cooper, he finds a way to get his team a win when they need it, or at least they're going to be competitive no matter what. So
Yeah, definitely.
Question for you, Mark. That's Marcus, by the way. With Jack Welch having moved on from Coppers Cove in the offseason, Kyle Cooper, has any area coach been at his current spot as long as Cooper has? I mean, I know that's not like 15 years. It's more like, 8 or 9 maybe? But I'm trying to think of any coach
the only one that I thought of, because I thought about this earlier, but I was wondering about when Miller came on at Rockdale.
This is his 11th year, I think.
It might be him.
Yeah, but those, I mean,
Or you know what? It might be more than that.
it could be
Maybe
because
12 or 13. I can't remember what it
he
was.
replaced Robbie Clark, I believe.
Yeah.
And then before that was Casey Crean.
Yeah, it's been at least a decade.
So he could not only have the deepest voice among current area coaches, but be the dean of area
Yeah.
coaches as well.
Yeah, and Yeah, and Cooper, of course, he's been there a while, Gatesville. And yeah, you don't stay someplace if you're not doing things right in some capacity. And Miller, he's now got that state championship. And I'm sure Cooper would love to have one in Gatesville. But
Yeah.
if you get out of this district, you've got a chance, that's for sure. But we'll
13
see.
years for Miller.
13 years for Jeff Miller.
Baker's does.
So there is that.
They haven't run him out of town yet.
And I know we're kind of getting off sidetrack, but man, Miller, ever since he's been there, it seems like every year something's punched him in the gut, and he's just so resilient. Gets Rockdale ready every year. Alcoa closing down, losing some star players year in, year out, different things, his own family issues that we've well documented here in articles in the past. And I mean, I was for one, as sports reporters, you're never supposed to really cheer for anybody, kind of stay neutral, but I was definitely glad to see Rockdale and Miller especially win that state title last year. So
Yeah, definitely. And losing a bunch of guys off that team, you never know what to expect following a championship season. And the Tigers look like they've got some playmakers in place, and they're at least going to make a run at the district title with a couple other teams. But
And they got some pretty sweet facilities now, too.
now they got the new field, the new field house. All sorts of fun stuff happening out there in Rockdale in that program, up and down. Because last year they had a tennis team win a state title, I believe, and was the golf team.
Golf team, individual state champion, Lindy Laurel, runner-up, I believe,
Okay.
team-wise on the girls' side, and their boys were at state.
Yeah.
And did okay.
Yeah,
so
just a lot of.
yeah. They don't really want to be known as state golf powerhouse.
No.
The football's
The football definitely carries it, but up and down the athletic. Because he is the AD.
He is.
too. So.
And his son was out there playing golf too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so that's Rockdale doing some things again, and like we mentioned, next week, the big showdown.
And to be honest, Temple Belton is a good rivalry. It's an exciting game, but if you're talking best rivalries in the state, Cameron near Rockdale's way up there. There's so many things. Temple Belton is lately a good rivalry. But that said, Temple's beat them 6 times in a row. You kind of like to get that back and forth. No one really wins that Cameron Rockdale game much more than about 2-3 years in a row.
Sure.
That's how good they both are. So
yeah, and I was thinking about that after the game. You talk about a triple overtime game with Belton and Temple. You got to wonder, why weren't these teams playing every year? And we know why, and there's a whole story. But it's like, if you can play close, if you're if you have a geographical rival, you should be playing them every year if you can.
Right.
Because it creates that great atmosphere. Cameron Rockdale, there's nothing like it. Granger Bartlett, even when their teams are down, the communities get involved with that. Bruceville, Eddie Moody, these are the things that,
But that Temple Belton rivalry, they've only played each other 2 times when it was their own decision to play.
Right.
Every other time since I think '96, there was like a 60-year break, and then they went into the same district. That's why they played.
Yeah.
And then they were in the same district. Then whenever they split into different classes, they chose not to play each other. And then even a couple years recently, they chose not to play each other. So It's usually when they're put together as opposed to, hey, let's just play this game.
Well, that's kind of what makes the reincarnation of it a couple years ago that much better. Because they didn't have to play each other in 2016 and 2017.
One thing I know after watching the last 3 years with you and just the other night is whenever Belton does finally manage to win this game, it's going to be pretty sweet for that group and those fans because they've been put through the ringer the last 3 years of thinking this is the year.
Yeah, you lead at halftime in one of them. You're up by 14 in the third in another. And then, you leave some opportunities out there like Temple did last week and come up 3 points short in a shootout.
Had their heart ripped out a few times.
Yep. Anyway, anything else real quick? We are approaching world record time right now, but we're having a good time doing it.
Granger,
So-
Oh, yeah.
Granger 5 straight.
Granger
Okay,
first.
yeah.
Hey, if you are a podcast listener, pass the word on to somebody else who might want to listen. We're trying to
Sure.
drum up a following here
Yeah,
to
yeah.
appease our sponsors.
I'm a podcast listener. Danny, you should be listening to our podcast.
You know, my grandma can only tell her friends at church so many times, so we got to get other people.
Yep.
Andrew,
Hopefully they're praying for us at the same time.
And let us know you're listening.
who's the athlete of the week?
Ethan Easley over at Rosebud Lot. He had 122 yards rushing, scored all 3 touchdowns for the Eagles. I think they snapped their 2 or 3 game losing
Cougars.
streak.
Cougars,
So, yeah, Cougars, excuse me.
And what feature on Aaron Wagaman, the Temple kicker, 40-yard field goal in double overtime to help them win that game, even though it was only the second best kick of overtime. 51-yarder by Logan Smith from Belt. But he's a good
pretty cool,
kicker,
too.
and he's a sophomore. So
Yep. No Belton feature this week because they're off, or the Tigers are off. UMHB at Howard Payne after the Crusaders shut out Hardin Simmons.
who had the number 1 ranked offense
Yeah.
in the nation going into that
Yeah,
game
yeah.
and got shut out by the Purple Curtain.
The one
So-
thing that's been consistent over the last however many years, at least recently since I've been in the area, 3 years, that defense for UMHB is, it got them to the Stag Bowl the last couple of years, for sure.
It's unreal.
Especially when they get to the playoffs, what that defense does is pretty great. Anyway, so that's Saturday. Enjoy the week, enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you next week.